Hey guys, Gary Simon of CourseCetro.com, and today we're going to take a look at how to do kind of like a tutorial slash onboarding process using Ionic 3 and Angular 4. So in front of me here is the project that we're going to be doing from scratch here. So let me just show you real quickly. It looks like your typical, the app, they just installed it or whatever. And let's go through these different slides. So you can see that there's some cool animation taking place based on the swipe direction. And so we're going to use Angular animation to achieve that. And yeah, basically I'm going to be showing you everything from scratch about how to do something like this. This right here, the skip button, of course, works. It's going to like where your user interface would go for the main app. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. Oh, but real quick, before we begin, make sure you check out my site, CourseCetro.com, where you're going to find a bunch of courses on modern design and development. A lot are free, and the others you can access for the cost of buying me like a 6-pack each month. That's it. Now also, it probably wouldn't hurt to subscribe here on YouTube, and be sure to make sure the notifications are turned on. All right, let's get back to it. Okay, so prerequisites. You're going to need Node.js with NPM or the Node Package Manager installed. So to know whether or not you have that installed, at the command line, just type in npm-v and also node-v. And if those go unrecognized, then you have to visit nodejs.org, go to the download section, and then install Node.js. And by default, it will include this NPM up here. It'll be checked off at the very end of the installation dialog. So now, once you have that installed, reload your command line, and you can run these commands. It'll be there. And then next, we have to install the Ionic CLI, or command line interface. I'll just call it CLI for now, but based on the acronym. And to do that, we're going to run npm install -g Ionic at latest. I'm not going to actually run this, but if you don't have it installed, then go ahead and run this command, let it go for a bit and pause, and then come back. All right, so now once you have those three things installed, the Ionic CLI, Node, and npm, then we're going to use the Ionic CLI to start the actual project. So wherever you save your projects at, go there and type in Ionic start. And then next is the project name. I'm just going to call this onboarding. And then we're going to use the blank template. So I'm going to go ahead. And actually, I think this, it does take just a little bit of time. So I'll pause and come right back. All right, when it's done, it's going to prompt you, link this app to your Ionic dashboard to use tools like Ionic View. I'm going to hit Y. And if this is your first time running that, there may be some extra setup to get that working correctly. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and clear this. We're going to cd into the project name folder, onboarding. And before we serve up the serve command, we're going to go ahead and use the Ionic CLI to generate a page. So G for generate page, and then the name of the page will be just main. And we're not actually going to use this page at all. It's just going to serve as kind of like a placeholder for the fictional, the main user interface after the slides or the onboarding process. So next, what we're going to do is just run Ionic serve -l for lab. And when you run this, it'll compile it real quickly. It's also going to watch for any file changes as we develop, and it will launch a browser momentarily. And there we go. Exciting stuff. All right, so the next step, let's actually build out the slides. And this is made really easy by using ion-slides and individual ion slide elements within it. So we're going to use the Visual Studio Code for my code editor. You can use whatever you want though. All right, and here we are in the project folder of onboarding right here. We're going to go to source, and then we're going to go to pages, home, and home.html. Now, this is also the main page that we just generated as well. So in here, I'm going to hit Control B, by the way, and to get rid of that sidebar. What we're going to do is just get rid of pretty much everything with exception to Ion content. Okay. Now inside of here, to create slides, like I said, very, very simple. Ion slides, We're also going to add pager. And when you add pager, it's going to add little like a dot-based or a circle-based navigation at the very bottom. Otherwise, if you don't want those for whatever reason, just get rid of pager. We're going to include it though. All right, so now inside of here, this is where we use ion slide, singular. So ion-slide. I'm just going to put 1 here for now. Of course, we're going to change this up and change this to 2 and 3. So if we save this and go back to our browser, you'll see that we have, by the way, I'm going to change my platform here to, make sure it's on Android. You can use iOS if you wish. And here you go. Very simple. The sliding is a little bit finicky with your mouse, but it works much better when you're on your phone. But yeah, very simple. You can also click down here to change between these. Okay, so that's how that works. Obviously, extremely, extremely simple. So let's go ahead and actually add the HTML we're going to be using here for this first ion slide initially. So what we're going to do is put in real quick a div class of diag for dialogue or whatever. We're going to reference that momentarily in the Sass. And then we're going to put style equals background, URL, assets, img, whitebg.svg, and no repeat. Now, the reason I'm doing this inline and not through the class itself is because for some reason with my Android phone, it would not show the SVG when I was doing it in the Sass file. I tried almost every different type of path I can imagine. And then I put it inline right here just to test, and it worked. So I'm not exactly sure why. So that's why that's inline. Now, by the way, if you want access to this whitebg SVG file that I created, then go to the written version of this tutorial at coursetro.com. It'll be linked here on YouTube. And I have a download link just to show you right here. So download the project file, just right click and save link as. And then you're going to want to save it. Let me hit Control B to get the sidebar up. Within Assets, and you're going to create a folder called IMG, and it goes right in here. This is where whitebg goes, so I'm going to do that real quickly. All right, so I just got that in there, ready to go. All right, so let's go back down here, and let's continue on with our HTML. So right here, we're going to close this div. Control B, by the way. And inside of here, we're going to have a, let's see here, an ion icon element. So ion-icon. iOS will be iOS-analytics. This is what's going to give us our little icon that's featured at the top. For material design, it'll be MD Analytics. And these are just the icon names. Color equals primary, and then close that out. And then next, we're going to put in just an empty div, and a little bit later on, we're going to attach something to this div. That's why I created it in the first place, but for now, because we're going to add animation to it. But for now, it's just going to be blank. So then we're going to put in our H2, just put track your routine, and then also a paragraph element. And I'm going to copy and paste off screen here based on the written tutorial because I don't feel like typing that all out. There we go. And so that is the very first slide. So what you can do is take all the guts of this right here in between ion slide, copy it, paste it right here for 2 and 3, and then make custom adjustments as needed. So off screen, I have those custom adjustments already made, so I'm just going to paste those in from the tutorial. The only thing that changes here, by the way, is simply the icon name of iOS Trophy and MD Trophy, as well as just the text here. So nothing really too unique is occurring. So I'm going to do the third one real quick. And then at the end, just after ion slide, we're going to have a button. And so this button on click, which is Angular event binding, equals skip. So we're going to call a skip method. We'll define later on. We're going to give it an ID of skip as well so we can reference it in CSS. And then we'll use interpolation on a property that doesn't yet exist called skip message. And we're only doing this because I want to show you how you can change the actual skip message once they reach the end of your slides. Otherwise, you could just hard code skip in there if you wanted to. Okay, so that looks good. So let's save that. And this is what it looks like without any styling taking place. So yeah, pretty ugly. So let's go ahead and focus on styling this thing up. So what we're going to do first is hop into, real quickly, Control B. We're going to go to Source App and app.sas right here. So this is where your global settings go for your layout and such. So the very first thing I'm going to do is we're going to paste in an import statement to get a font called Railway from Google Web Fonts. Next, we're going to reference Ion content, what is that? And then background color, we're just make it a light gray. So background color is EF, and then important. And then also font family, just gonna set to Railway. All right, cool. Next, we're gonna go over to source theme down here in variables.sas, and we're just going to change the primary variable right here to this color right there, which is kind of just like a purple. So we'll save that. And then we're going to spend the rest of the time in our home SAS file. All right, so let's get rid of this. And let's reference the first class that we created, which is the diag. So we're going to put in position absolute. Z-index is 1. A width of 100%. And this, by the way, is a container for the SVG graphic. Let's see, top here will be 0, and height. I had to play around with this to get this correct. So I'm really kind of curious like how this works out on different phones. I only tested on mine, so you may have to adjust it or change things up a bit. So let's look and see what we have going on so far. Yeah, pretty ugly. It's all messed up, but we're just starting out here. So let's also put in Ion icon. Margin top is going to be 40%. Font size is 7 EM. Our H2 element, we're just going to put in margin top of 80%. And font weight of bold and font size of 1 EM. Let's check things out. There we go. It's coming along a lot better. Let's also reference our paragraph element. So the width, we don't want to go 100%, so we'll make it 80. Display block, margin 0 auto to center it, and then font size, we're going to make it a little bit smaller, 0.9 EM. All right, let's take that. All right, getting pretty good here. All right, and then just about done almost. So down here, we're going to reference a class called Swiper, Pagination, Bullet, Active. So you may be wondering, by the way, let me just put in our background color here, C400FF. That's our purple. So when we save this, it changes it to our main color up here. So you may be wondering, where did I find that class? Well, if you hit Control-Shift-I, and we click on this little button here in Chrome, we can select the individual element right there. And this is where I got this. And that's a way we can change, find these classes so we can make custom adjustments to it through the CSS. All right, and then also I wanted to push up this section. It's a little bit too close to the bottom, so I wanted to push it up. And I did the same thing. I found which class I need to adjust, and that's Swiper, Pagination, bottom, 12%, important. So now we save it, and it moves right up. Oops. All right, and then there's one more rule set we have to define, which is the skip button. So position is going to be absolute. Bottom is going to be 20 pixels from the bottom of the viewport. Width is 100%. Also have a background of none. Text align is going to be center. cursor pointer. I don't think we really have to add this. It's just for the browser. And then Z index, just push it up, make sure it's on the top of 5. So now we don't yet see it because there's no text there. We haven't defined that, that property. All right, so now let's go ahead and focus on making that skip button present and actually work when you click it. So let's hit Control B. We're gonna go to Home TS. And the first thing we need to do is import our main page that we generated with the CLI, which is residing right here. So we import it at the top. All right, so right here, we need to adjust. There we go, right there. And we're also going to head on over to our app module.ts. So whenever you generate, yeah, I wish the CLI would do this for us, but we have to do it manually. We also have to import it here in our app module. And so this is the correct URL for there. And then also we have to add it this, right, as declarations, and then also in entry components. So we'll save that, go back. All right, and next what we want to do is reference that property called skip MSG. It's a string, and we're going to set it to skip initially. And then we're going to create our skip method that we referenced on click. So this .nav control, we're going to push this new page upon them clicking that skip button. So we save it, and now once it reloads, it's building. Takes a little bit longer whenever you're saving like one of the component files or you change something. So we can see skip, and we click it, and it takes us to our main navigation page. All right, so we actually have to add, I think I put that in the wrong area. Oops. Let's go ahead and fix that real quick. That HTML, it needs to go outside of Ion slides. Sorry about that. So let's save. And now it stays there. Sweet. All right. Okay, so continuing on, let's say for instance, once a user gets to the last page, like right here, we only have 3, of course. We want to change this skip to something else. Well, let's do that real quickly. So we go to Home TS, and what we want to do is first we have to import a view child and slides. So to do that, we import view child here from the Angular core. Actually, that's a little bit redundant, so you just add it up top after component. So now we can get rid of this one. And then also slides. So again, a little bit redundant right there. All right, so now we can go ahead and save this. And next thing we have to do is in the HTML, we have to attach an input method. And so what that looks like is we go to our pager, and right there, right after pager, we put an Ion slide did change. All right, so this is an event that happens, and when it changes, we're going to call a method called slide changed, like that. So whenever the slide changes, we're going to call this right there. So save that, go back to our Home TS, and we'll define that down here. So before we can do that, we have to define the view child right here. This gives us access, or our component access, to what's happening in the template, basically. So we're calling it slides, and we'll reference that shortly. So now we create that slide changed method right here, and we're going to say if this dot slides, this again, this is in reference to this right here, dot is end. So we're saying if we've reached the last slide, then we're going to change the skip message. So this dot skip MSG equals, so it's going to go from skip to, all right, I got it, or whatever you want. So now we go back Now watch this right down here. Make this a little bit bigger for us. All right, changed. All right, I got it. Sweet. All right. Awesome. So now let's go ahead and focus on integrating animation. Now, as it stands, if we look at this, this is good. I mean, this is, you know, this is something that you could say, well, you know, this is finished. I like it. It's well designed, et cetera, et cetera. But if you want to add a little bit something extra, we can integrate animation so that when this is swiped, these will move over and they will animate and it almost look like they're being drugged. It's actually a really cool effect, and I'm sure you saw it already at the beginning of the video on my phone. So let's go ahead and do that. So the very first thing we have to do to integrate animation is import the animations library, and we do that through npm in the console. But first, you need to go to your package.json file and take note of what the core, Angular core is. And for me, that's 4.1.3. That's what's currently being installed with the CLI for Ionic. Now, actually, the current version is 4.2 point something else. So you need to note this right here. And I'll tell you why in a second. So let's go up to our console. And I'm going to get out a new one real quickly. So I'm going to right click. I'm using Commander, by the way. That's CMDER for my console app here in Windows. I'm going to hit new console. We're going to go to CD, code, and onboarding. And then we're going to use npm install Angular animations at, and then your version number based on that package.json. So 4.1.3, and we'll save it as a dependency. So if we put, for instance, like at Angular animations at latest, it would install a different animations package, maybe perhaps a newer one like 4.2. And for me, that presented issues and it errored. So you want it to be the same package version as, you know, as the core library essentially. Okay, so after that, let's go back to our code and close this out. And now what we need to do is go to our app.module.ts. And again, this is all specific to Angular, not necessarily Ionic. Angular 4 changed the way you work with animations, and so it's separate. It's outside of the Angular core library now. And so we have to import this line right here, browser animations module from Angular platform browser animations. And then we add this as an import. So we put a comma, and there we go. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and add animation to the actual slides. So the first thing we need to do is go to the component that contains the animations that we want to add. And right here, we're going to put a comma and add a bunch of animation specific functions. So trigger, transition, style, state, animate, and keyframes. This is all pretty much standard for animation using Angular. All right, and then next we're going to define animations, and of course in Angular that goes in the component decorator section right here. So also real quick, just to note, you may be wondering, why aren't we just going to use CSS based animations? Well, the reason being is when the slides load, for instance, like this whole page loads, everything gets rendered at the same time. So it doesn't really allow us, CSS alone doesn't allow us to add event-based animations. So we're just going to use Angular animations. So we're going to put in animations, open up an array, and this is where we define our first animation, which when you're starting off with animations in Angular, you start off with the trigger function, which we imported. And then the first argument of the trigger function is the name. So we're just going to call this bounce, kind of bounces, whatever. Name it what you want. And then we're going to open up an array. And inside of here, we are going to start off with state. So that's another animation function we imported. And the next argument is the name or the type of state. So we're going to say any state by using the wildcard. And then we're going to use the style function. Those little pop-ups are annoying. I'm going to turn that off real quickly. If I go to File, where am I at? Preferences and Settings. I'm just going to, there we go. We'll save that, close this. Okay, so now inside of here in the style, we're just going to make transform, translate y, or x rather, 0. All right, and then after this, we're going to add in a comma, and we're going to create a transition. So the transition, the first one is going to go from any state to right swipe. And this is just a custom name that I made, by the way. And then we're going to call the animate function. First argument is the duration and animation type and a delay if you want, but we're just going to make it last about 700 milliseconds and ease out. And then we're going to use keyframe-based animations. So we use the keyframes function. And inside of here, we use just separate style functions. So inside of here, we're going to have transform, translate x. We're going to start off at the 0 position. And then the offset is 0. The offset just allows you to determine at what point during this 700 milliseconds or how long this will last. All right, so after that, we put in a comma. Oops, not a period. We're going to copy this, and let me make sure I did this right. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, and then paste that 3 times. So in the middle, if they're swiping to the right, or they're going through logically to the right, then we're going to translate x on the negative axis of about 65 pixels. And then this is just going to go back to 0. Now this offset here will change to 0.3. And then this is 1 at the very end. Pretty simple stuff. Okay, so now we're going to do another one of these. So we're just going to copy, and we're only going to change one thing, or 2 things rather. This name here is going to be left swipe. So if they're going back to the beginning, then we're going to change this here from negative to positive, and that changes the animation type so that it's more consistent. Otherwise, if you just use this alone, for any method or any direction of swipe, it actually will jitter around a lot because when you're swiping left, for instance, this value works against. Either way, just trust me, it looks like crap. So, all right, so I will save this. Not done yet. Now in the actual class component down here, we have to define a property. We're going to call it state. Type of string, and we're just going to make it equal anything other than right swipe or left swipe. So I'm just going to call it x. Maybe a better way of doing this, but that's what works for me. And then we're going to create a method, slide moved. We'll add this in the template momentarily. We're going to say if this slides. Now we're going to use a new method. So we used isEnd already, but there's also another one called get active index. So each one of these slides that's defined in our HTML, so like Ion slide right here, this one as well, has an index, and it starts at 0. So this is 0, 1, and 2. All right, so we want to get, which slide they're currently at, and then we're going to compare it, and we're going to say if it's greater than or equal to this.slides.get previous index. And that allows us to get, obviously, the previous index. So we have the active versus the previous. So this will allow us to determine, based on whether or not this value is equal to or greater than, we can determine if a person is swiping left or right. All right, so if that's greater, then we're going to set this.state to right swipe. All right, and that's going to activate this transition right here. So we're going from any state to right swipe, then it's going to animate based on this information here. All right, so, oops, sorry about that. Coming down, we're going to say else this state equals left swipe. Awesome. All right, we're going to create one final method here. We'll be done working pretty much in this component file. We're going to call it animation done. and we're going to set it to this state equals X. So I'm resetting it from right swipe or left swipe. And basically when the animation is completed or the swipe is completed, then we're setting this .state to something else. Otherwise, it won't repeat this right swipe or left swipe if it equals left swipe or right swipe already. And that happens when you're reaching the end or the beginning of the swiping, or the slides rather. So this is something I had to add in order to fix that. So now let's go ahead and call slide moved and animation done in the template in home. So up here where we have our Ion slides with our Ion slide did change, let's go ahead and copy this, paste it, and we're going to change this here to slide drag. So that's another input event that we can call when the Ion is actually, or the slide is actually being dragged. So then we're going to call slide moved. All right, so again, if we look back at slide moved, we'll see what we're doing here. We're just detecting which direction it's moving and calling this state right swipe or left swipe based on the animation. And then we have to come down and attach actual animation to the elements that we want to move. So for me, if we're looking back at this here, I want this to animate, and I want this text right here to animate. So these, remember that empty div that we added that is wrapped around this? We're going to attach the animation on that and this. Okay, so let's go back. And the way we attach the animation, of course, this is based on how Angular handles things. We're going to put in brackets with @ and the trigger name is bounce equals state. So the state, again, that's defined in our component. And then we also, and we only have to do it just for this icon here. We just have to do it somewhere where animation has been attached. We're going to call @, and this is through event binding, so we use parentheses, @bounce dot done. So they're saying once that animation is done, then we're going to call a method of animation done, which we just defined, and we don't even have to pass in the event. So right there is good. All right, so right here, let's just copy that, and we're going to paste that right here. We're also going to paste it again on this icon for the second slide and this div, and then also this icon, oops, and this div. All right, sweet, I think that's it. So let's go ahead and save. Now, let's see if this works. See that? There we go. And now notice it goes back. It's calling left swipe at this point. So that way, that way. Very, very cool. All right, so hopefully you guys learned a lot. Please check out coursetro.com. Make sure you subscribe here on YouTube. At coursetro.com, of course, you have a bunch of free courses and any of the paid courses. And by the way, all my paid courses are full stack developer project-based courses. So you learn how to do full apps and stuff like that. So please check that out. Like I said, it costs like buying me a 6-pack once a month. So yeah. All right. Talk to you guys later.